The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, unless you're on the West Coast. I guess it's still morning. Welcome to this month's HR Best Practices webinar. My name is Kevin Mosher. I'm a partner at the law firm Thompson Co. up in the St. Paul, Minnesota office for Thompson Co., where I practice labor and employment, HR, including all immigration law. So, along with HR comes helping employers to sponsor employees for green cards and then also sponsor current and prospective employees for visas so that they can work in the United States. So that's why I'm going to talk today. So this month we are going to talk about what the general overview of visas and green cards. We're also going to do a little bit of immigration update since things are changing so significantly at the federal level. And then next month, the October webinar will talk about like raids and how to comply with various immigration laws in the workplace. And so we'll talk about I-9 compliance. We'll talk about penalties. We'll talk about protocols that you'll want to implement in the workplace and that sort of thing. So today we're going to focus on bringing workers in and keeping workers here and all that, and then next week we'll talk about how to make work on compliance and those sorts of issues. If you're new to the webinar series, welcome. I welcome you to this. This is our monthly webinar series. If you need HRCI or SHRM or various CLEs at various states that we apply for, then you should be getting a certification after your attendance is verified by the powers that be for these webinars, and then that certification will be sent out, so you'll get all your credits and all that. And along the way, if you have any questions, you're definitely welcome to ask them I think it's on the right side of your screen. There should be some sort of question box that allows you to type in some questions, and periodically, I think today we'll have a little bit of time, some pauses that I can take a look at those questions to see if they still need answering, or if I cover them through the webinar. So again, welcome, and we'll get started here. These are the general topics that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk. We'll give an update on immigration, because immigration is quite the topic these days. It's different. It's a different topic. The tenor of the topic is very different today than it has been for the last 15 or so years. So rather than having a lot of our conversation about increasing visas for foreign nationals to come and work in the United States or invest in the United States, now the conversation has flipped 180 into just trying to hold on to what has been out there as far as laws with regard to allowing people to come to the United States and invest and create businesses and work. And so now the conversation is how to limit those people. And it's just a very different conversation than we've had, not only in the last 15 years, but really the last 50, 60 years since the United States has been pursuing a global capitalist system and a globalization, which has really taken hold since the 90s. And so with globalization comes the need for talent to perform higher skilled work. And so we've got a lot of visas along those lines, and we're not the only country that's pursuing highly talented technical people. There are a lot of other countries doing it. But the United States has such a great opportunity for that with Silicon Valley and other tech businesses in the United States. So anyway, the conversation is very different. So a lot of what we'll talk about today, we're going to talk about process and all that with bringing people over, but honestly, who knows what could happen? There have been a lot of tweaks. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of, I guess, fear, I assume, is what's driving a lot of this. So there's a lot of that, and that seems to have changed the conversation and the tone from encouraging highly skilled workers and people with a lot of money to come and invest in the United States. That's changed the tone to, I'm not telling anybody something that they don't already know, which is a more fearful, protectionistic, keep people out conversation. And so it's going to reflect in the process that we'll talk about today, and I think the changes that we're likely to see over the next several years. So we're going to talk about that, and you can see the other topics here. So let's jump into it. And I will say, in all honesty or candor, whatever it is, I am very firmly personally believing in globalization, and so I definitely side with economic interests. And all studies show that the United States benefits economically from highly skilled workers like H-1Bs and stuff. And I'm not talking about illegal workers. I'm talking about highly skilled workers. And so it's my personal opinion. So definitely it's okay that we disagree. But I do want to at least put out there that since it seems to be important for people to know these days, that I'm certainly biased toward globalization and the expansion of U.S. trade abroad and the bringing in of highly skilled workers to the United States. So what are we seeing from the administration? We've been seeing a lot of things, a lot of it which has gotten big national news, and a lot of it which probably only for those of us who are doing immigration law and that have seen. So what have we seen? There was a lot of noise about the travel ban at the beginning of the Trump administration. So one executive order went out right after he got in office, right? One executive order went out, said that no refugees or green cards could come into the United States from like all these, 90 to 99% Muslim countries. So it reeked of religious discrimination, which is, arguably against the Constitution. A bunch of federal judges agreed, put a hold on it. A week or two later, the Trump administration issued a second executive order saying sorry, and they watered it down a little bit to just refugees from these countries. You can see it on the second little dash thing, saying that refugees couldn't come into the United States unless they had a bona fide a relationship with the United States. So unless they were coming in to visit family, but if they had no relationship, even if they're refugees, and to be a refugee, just to make it clear, to be a refugee in the world, according to U.S. law, you have to be fleeing oppression, war, or some sort of devastating thing like the threat on your life or your family's life. It's not just like anybody coming in from anywhere where the world. You have to be fleeing oppressive political, oppressive military situations. And that's why we've got Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Iran, Yemen. So we've got those countries that a lot of people seek to come to the United States as refugees. And so the travel ban, which has been seemingly, at least temporarily, upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, there's this travel ban, and the Trump administration was able to get that through. So refugees were limited in coming to the United States. Now, what the big one that the Trump administration tried to do was for like a bunch of these Muslim primarily Muslim countries, is to get green cards, people on green cards not to come in. And that's a pretty big deal. And those are figuratively fighting words. And so, people on green cards, those people are just shy of citizenship in the United States. They can actually be drafted. They can serve in the military. So that was a really, that was kind of a bridge too far for the administration to try to restrict them. And like I said, very quickly, a bunch of federal judges put the kibosh on that. So green card people can come to the United States, at least now, and it doesn't seem like they're trying to restrict anybody. But at least the travel ban, in part, has been upheld by some courts, and including the Supreme Court temporarily. So we've all heard about that, right? The thing that you would only really hear about if you're applying for visas, particularly H-1Bs, all the applications, for new H-1Bs, which went out on April 1 of this year is that the processing times have been very slow. So whereas we haven't seen Congress really do anything, shocking, we haven't seen a lot of, we haven't seen any regulations from the Department of Homeland Security changing the process for visas. But what has happened, it's kind of like the slow walk. So they're processing things, but they're really just taking their time. And they were taking their time before, but now they're really taking their time. And so that's kind of a passive aggressive way of kicking people out of, in a lot of situations, kicking them out of the workforce and out of the country. Because a lot of these H-1Bs, for example, if you're still waiting on your H-1B, you applied for it in April, you might, you apply for it for October 1 work authority. Well, a lot of people are still waiting on their application to get approved, and October 1 is right around the corner. And if they don't get the application approved, a lot of those people are going to have to leave the country. Even though they've got this visa processing, if they don't leave the country, they're potentially illegal, and they certainly can't work. So unless they're on some sort of other visa status, so it's the slow walk here, the exacerbated processing times is a kind of a passive aggressive way of weeding people out who are waiting around for their visas to process. So we'll see how that goes. Again, this every day changes a little bit. One of the interesting facts I put on here, deportations of illegals down and arrests are up. One of the interesting facts coming out, and I think this is going to change, is that when the Department of Homeland Security released their statistics in the first quarter of the Trump administration, the number of deportations was down, which is surprising. There might be some reasons for that, but it was surprising that you would have guessed, I guess, that the Trump administration would have been ramping up the deportations, but the arrests were up. So it seemed like a lot of individuals and non-criminal individuals. So that's the one thing that the Trump administration's done. It's prioritized non-criminal. Deportations and arrests for being just illegal. So, family members, maybe some workers, some employees at your businesses might have been just arrested for, being, stopped and put in containment after finding that they were illegal. But the number of deportations, so these arrests, these like random arrests and arrests of illegal people without criminal records has increased significantly, but the deportations are down. I expect more resources will go toward deportations in the future. But the deportations under the Obama administration were significantly increased over the Bush administration just before it. It's kind of one of the things I don't want to say that Obama didn't get credit for, but it like went unrecognized, I guess, kind of that the Obama administration really ramped up deportations of illegal, undocumented workers and undocumented people, illegal people in the United States. So that's kind of where we are now. And then last night, as I was putting this together, like pops up on the Washington Post as I was taking a break and reading other things, that the Trump administration and the Democrats in Congress have come to some sort of deal on the Dreamers Act. So just to bring everybody up to speed, because you're going to hear about it in the news if you haven't already heard about it today and you haven't heard about it over the months. It's one thing to go after illegal, people who came over to the United States illegally, crossed the border, came into West Texas or whatever it is, and, try to make a better life or sell drugs or whatever they're going to do. It's one thing to get rid of those people. But these DACA individuals, it's an entirely different thing. So who are the Dreamers, if you're not familiar? When we say DACA, what does that mean? So it means that if you are an individual who is under the age of 16 when you were brought into the United States illegally by your parents or smuggled over or something like that, and you were under the age of 16 and you've graduated high school or you've gotten your GED, and then as of 2012 you were under the age of 31, and criminal history, so good, clean, upstanding citizen who got high school education, then the Obama administration, through executive order, said, you know what, we're going to call it DACA, and then those individuals can apply for work authority cards to become legal in the United States, which means they can actually travel out of the United States. They don't have to sneak out of the United States, which is super dangerous. And so they don't have to sneak out of the United States, and more importantly for businesses, they can work in the United States. So there are about 800,000. That's a lot. There are about 800,000 people, young adults, in this situation where they were brought over as kids. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do it on their own. They've got no criminal history, upstanding citizens, and so they've been able to work and go to college, and they can travel back and forth to the United States. But that's a 2-year renewal. And the Trump administration 2 weeks ago said they're going to phase out DACA, this executive order, and so the Trump administration directed the Department of Homeland Security to stop taking renewals for as of October 5th, to stop taking renewals for the 2-year extensions. So it's not like DACA is just going to go away. It didn't go away on September 5th, and it's not going to go away on October 5th, and it's not even going to go away on March 5th. But as of October 5th, that's the end of the 2-year renewals. And so we're going to start phasing these people on DACA are going to start phasing out. And where are they going to go? Who knows? They're going to either leave the country, or more likely they're going to stay here because this is the only life they've known for the most part. And so they're just going to be, illegals. But for businesses, what you need to know is that, assuming this all goes forward as currently it stands, what you need to know is that if you take a look at the employment authorization documents that you have for your workers, if you take a look, and if it under category, if it says C33, that's DACA. And so that means, so for planning purposes for you, you need to be aware that your employee there, within 2 years or so, is probably not going to be able to work unless things change. And so just be kind of aware. And then the current employment authorization card, those things are always, they're renewed for 2-year time periods, and that's probably going to expire. But hopefully your employee by October 5th applies for renewal, and you might want to bring it up to their attention if they're not already savvy to the whole deal. But if you like this employee, you're going to want to identify them as DACA C33, and then either advise them or help them or whatever to get their renewal application in by October 5th, so they at least have 2 more years to work for you while this whole thing gets figured out. So last night, so that's DACA, right? They call it sometimes the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act, it's kind of silly that they call it the DREAM Act, because the DREAM Act is basically something that hasn't been able to pass through Congress. Congress wasn't interested in the DREAM Act, and that's why President Obama in 2012 had to use executive order to do this, which was, as you can imagine, controversial. And so last night, Trump and the Democrats apparently came to some sort of deal to pass the DREAM Act and extend DACA, much to the glee of a lot of 800,000 people that are potentially going to be illegal in the United States in a couple of years. But then, shockingly, today the Republicans in Congress are like, well, we FYI, we have the majority. You should probably talk to us about this. And so, who knows? I certainly don't know, and I'm done prognosticating on anything when it comes to politics these days. All I would say is pay attention, and if you don't have any DACA employees, not a big deal probably for you. But if you do have, there are 800,000, and they're all like working age people for the most part. Take a look and see if you have any. Watch out for it in the future as you're hiring, because if you're hiring somebody on DACA that has limited work authority that might expire in like 6 months or so, just be aware that you might be done with that employee in 6 months unless Congress does something. And again, I don't really put much faith in Congress doing anything. So pay attention. We'll see what happens. Okay, so moving on to visas and green cards and all the stuff that that we'd like to talk about, and to bring over highly skilled highly skilled workers. I mean, I'm really focusing on highly skilled professionals and workers, and we're talking about the ways to legally do this. I know there are a lot of illegal workers, undocumented workers out there, and they're, at employers all over the United States. And, maybe some of you on this phone call have undocumented workers, whether you know it or not. They might have fake documents. I understand there's a lot of those people out there. But today we're going to focus on highly skilled workers. We're going to focus on executives. We're going to focus on managers for a technical, highly skilled workforce, which is what so many of the businesses in the United States are all about. And so why is that important? Well, even though there's backlash to it right now, the long-term trend for decades and decades and decades has been to open up markets globally and to trade globally, lower tariffs, bring people over, and have the division of labor, and bring people over to the United States and have people go to other countries that are highly skilled. It's let them pursue the American dream, let them pursue the German dream, whatever it is, the British dream, but bring your highly skilled workers from India, from China, from other countries, although in the United States about 85% of them are Indian tech workers. Bring those people over to the United States. And let them work here in professions that we just don't have enough homegrown talent to provide. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with the fact that the United States doesn't have enough highly skilled workers to perform all the jobs in the United States. All statistics seem to disprove that, but I know that anecdotally a lot of people think that highly skilled workers are taking jobs. But whatever, I guess people have different opinions, but all the statistics tend to show that the United States lacks sufficient training and college graduates in engineering and the sciences and that sort of thing, and the medical profession to provide enough doctors and engineers and scientists and stuff to perform all the work that our businesses demand. So that might be you. You might be one of those businesses that demands highly skilled technical workers, and you might be recruiting from a global population pool of workers. And how do you find those global workers? So often it's the U.S. collegiate system that's bringing them over, that's enticing them to come to the United States, get that engineering degree, and then you're hiring them as a recent grad, or maybe you're bringing them over as while they're pursuing their degree. But then upon graduation, they can work for you. If they're in a STEM degree, they can work for you for up to 29 months post-graduation. And so you can kind of try them out. And then after STEM, after you graduate, the typical flow here is after graduation is that then you migrate to an H-1B visa. And then you go from H-1B visa to a green card, and eventually they become a citizenship and they get to realize the American dream. But that's the typical flow for highly skilled workers. And so we're going to talk about that under the H-1B to green card framework. But then there are other visas, and there are other business reasons to bring people over. That's not just highly skilled H-1B people. And so we're going to talk about that as well. But there are a whole lot of reasons that the demand has been increasing for highly skilled workers. I mean, the last 3 years alone, the United States has had over 200,000 applications for new H-1B visas, and there are only 85,000 H-1B visas to be had. There's clearly a demand. The government's not working with business, right? The government doesn't do business, so maybe the government doesn't fully understand capitalism and supply and demand, but businesses get it, and unfortunately, we only have 85,000 H-1B visas to be allocated, and the demand has been over 200,000 every year for the last several years. And really since the end of the Great Recession, there's been way more demand than the 85,000. It's just the last few years alone, it's been over 200. So the visas, two basic elements here that you need to know. Everybody does the I-9, right? So a lot of you are HR professionals. You do the I-9. The I-9 is the document that shows that the person sitting across from the table from you that you've just hired or made an offer to can work in the United States. That's why you do the I-9. If the person's not, like me, a U.S. citizen with a passport, and they're or they don't have a social security card that doesn't have a stamp that says valid only with DHS authorization, but they don't have like a clean social security card, they don't have a passport, then they're probably going to be a foreign national and they're going to need a visa. Everybody's going to need a visa. I don't care if they come in to work for like one day at, your concert or whatever, whatever it is, they need to have a visa to work in the United States, and you as a business need to ensure that all workers that are working for the company, if you want to comply with immigration laws, you need to ensure that all workers have work authority. And foreign nationals get work authority, and they demonstrate that work authority through visas. And the visas are then reflected on Section 2 of the I-9. They're a List A document. So when you see a visa, you put it down on List A. But there are only a certain type of there are only certain types of visas that are really going to be applicable for your business and to bring people over to the United States. A lot of them you're going to have to sponsor on your own, so you're going to affirmatively have to take actions that tell the government that, hey, I want this person to come and work for me, whether it's for a day or 3 years or whatever it is. I need to make an application to the United States government, get the approval, and then the person's going to go to a U.S. embassy abroad, and they're going to get that approval, and they're going to then make an application with the Department of State to come into the United States to work. Maybe they're already here in the United States. Maybe they're a current student. They're working for you after graduation, and you want to sponsor them for an H-1B visa. That's fine too. You can get them to you can make the application for the H-1B visa, and then their status will transfer nicely. But if they're outside the United States, they're going to have to make an application with the Department of State. So there are a lot of visas, most visas, where you as a business have to sponsor and take affirmative steps, normally calling legal counsel to help you out. If the employee is saying, hey, I've got this person that I know, I'd be very wary. There are a lot of disreputable, I hate to say unethical, but there have been a lot of arrests and violations and a lot of bad practices out there around the United States. People that aren't lawyers who are practicing and doing these visas for people. So I'd just be very wary anytime somebody comes to you and says, I've got this person that can help you as a business get the visa. There are certain visas that the person can apply for themselves at the U.S. Embassy, mainly the TN visa for NAFTA treaty workers, or the B visa for business, for certain short temporary business, business visitors. So we'll talk about these in a second, but for the most part, you as a company, if you want somebody to work for you, you're going to have to, in most situations, you're going to have to take affirmative actions to help them do that. And then, let's see, let's just jump. Yeah, so here are the general steps for obtaining work authority. Okay, I kind of already talked about this with my student to H-1B to green card to U.S. citizenship scenario, but here's generally a good framework that you're going to do, right? So you're going to identify the candidate. Maybe they've come through, you've found them somehow, maybe through college or something like that. You need to determine whether or not they have work authority in the United States. And if they're a U.S. citizen, then no big deal. Then they've got a passport and a social security card, and it's easy enough to get them for them to prove the work authority. And if no, here's what you need to ask. You need to ask, are you coming from a foreign subsidiary? So if this is an intercompany transfer, then that would be like an L visa. We'll talk about L visas in a bit. Are they recent grad, or are they currently, are they getting ready to graduate from a U.S. university? If the answer is yes, then you're looking at an F visa, student visa, post-grad. If it's a STEM program, they can work for you up to 29 months, assuming that you're enrolled in the E-Verify program. And if not, then they can, then you get 12 months, non-STEM or non-STEM and E-Verify. Then they get 12 months that they can work for you post-graduation, but only 12 months. It's not you can't extend it, so you got to switch them over to H-1B as soon as possible. So you need to figure out their education, their skills, that sort of thing. And then because it's easier to get visas, it's not, guaranteed by any means. Nothing's guaranteed with immigration anymore, and it really never was guaranteed. But generally speaking, the higher the education of the person, the easier it is to ultimately find work authority for them. Then you need to determine their qualifications for the job. You go off the job description for that, and then try to figure out what the appropriate visa is. And I've got a handy dandy chart that we'll take a look at in a little bit. And then you make the application. So you contact me or some other attorney, and you make an application, make a petition for them to immigration. You receive approval, and then they either adjust their status to like H-1B or L or whatever it is in the United States, or if they're outside the United States, they make the application to the U.S. Department, at the U.S. Embassy, the Department of State. And then they come to the United States and they start working for you. And then, depending on the visa that they're here on, then they can, sponsor. They can transition. You can make an application, a petition for them to sponsor them for a green card. And there you go. And then they get the green card years later, and they could even make a decision, citizenship, after spending enough time on green card. So this is a pretty typical flow for how you're going to identify a candidate from like start to finish on this. But all along the way, definitely, if you ever have any questions, definitely call and stuff. But I think this is a flow chart that'll work, that'll help you out at least. We're going to talk about 4 categories of visas today with specificity. I found this it's tongue in cheek, obviously, but it does talk about the state of things these days with this picture here of I think that's Jasmine or something. I do have a 10-year-old daughter, so she's kind of into Disney, and so I think Jasmine's one of the many Disney princesses. So anyway, she would have been denied. I guess she'd be denied potentially under the current limitations for refugees coming into the United States. So we're going to move on to H-1Bs, Ls, TNs, and Bs. So let's talk about H-1Bs. So I've already kind of mentioned the H-1Bs. What are general principle? What's an H-1B? An H-1B visa is for highly skilled employees or workers with technical degrees that have a related degree. I always say this, so I'm sorry if you've heard it before. Me with my history degree, I'm not getting an H-1B visa. Maybe if I were hired as a history professor, but that's it. There's no H-1B visa in my future as a history major from the University of Wisconsin. As much fun as it was, and as much as I learned. Unfortunate for me. My law degree is going to make me highly skilled. So, yay, 3 years of law school got me to be highly skilled. I guess I could get an H-1B visa to come into the United States if I got my law degree in, Singapore or whatever. And I guess I could come into the United States on an H-1B visa. But history degree is not a highly technical degree. No jobs really require a history degree short of professor type of jobs. So really what we're talking about, most of these H-1B visas go to tech workers and engineers. Now, certainly you could bring over people like doctors, medical professionals as well that have specialized degrees in a highly skilled field. So, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about really highly paid, for the most part, people that are coming in. They're graduating college in the United States, most of them. They're graduating college in the United States with tech degrees, with some sort of STEM degree, and then they're being recruited by Silicon Valley or any other tech company or any other company, big or small, around the United States to come in and perform, a service that they're having a hard time recruiting U.S. citizens for. And so every year on April 1, we get to apply for the new batch, the new quota of H-1B visas. And as you can imagine, as the United States economy has developed and the needs for more highly skilled workers has developed, the need for the H-1B visa has increased in popularity significantly. But we've only got 65,000 of them every year, and a bunch of 6,800 of them specifically go just to Singapore and in Chile. But we've got 65,000 new ones every year. If you're recruiting, you have a new candidate come to you and they've got a current H-1B with another employer, then you can transfer. So that's not within that 65,000. You can use that previous approval, and you can transfer them over and get a new visa for them. You still have to make a petition to the government, but you can, they're not within that 65,000. They've already been counted. And then if you've got a master's degree from a U.S. institution, then there's another 20,000. So we're going to get up to 85,000 total. There's another 20,000 H-1Bs just for master's people. But again, last year we had over 200,000 that are, between this. And so, generally the proportion's about 3 to 1, 1 to 3. So for every 3 applications, one gets even selected in the lottery that is run after April 1st. Which is a problem for businesses. A lot of uncertainty and can be kind of disheartening for the individuals and the businesses as well. You can get, so let's just say you're lucky and you have an employee that is on an H-1B, or you get lucky in the lottery and you get selected. How long can they work for you? The visa is going to be for at the most 3 years, and then it can be renewed. And so it can be a maximum of 6 years on H-1B. So if you're hiring somebody, you're bringing somebody, you're recruiting somebody, whatever it is, you need to figure out how much H-1B time they have left. Maybe they've got a full 6 years. That's great, but they're not going to get more than 6 years. The only way, and this is why you need to look ahead, the only way to get more than 6 years is if you apply for a green card for them. So that process needs to get far enough down the line so that when the 6-year maximum is coming up, that you can say, no, I've already got an approved application for a green card. And to get that approved application, you're talking at least a year, generally at least a year, probably closer to a year and a half. So you really need to plan far enough in advance. Like if you really like this H-1B person, you need to really start thinking after their first or second year of work with you. You have to kind of make the decision, do you really like them long term? And if the answer is yes, then you need to pursue the green card for them, because they're going to run out of H-1B after 6 years. And they're going to have to leave the country, or they're going to have to go back to school or whatever, but they're not going to be able to work for you. So after like a year or two, you need to make the call. Do I like this person enough? Are we going to sponsor them for the green card? You have to make that decision. And if they do get an approved green card, even though the green card might take years and years and years to get processed, you'll be able to continue to renew and get more than the 6 years on the H-1B. So heads up, that's how you need to look at this. And then there are filing fees, just so you know, for the H-1B. It's not free. Everybody's surprised, but it's not free. And so these are the filing fees. The $750 or $1,500 is depending on the size of your business. If you have less than 26 employees, it's going to be a $750 fee. And then if it's you have 26 or more employees, it's going to be $1,500. If you're thinking about sponsoring somebody for an H-1B, for a new H-1B, I always tell everybody, contact me in no later than, generally contact me by February 15th. Gives plenty of time to get everything together. The application needs to be to immigration on or within a day, really April 1st. Just consider it April 1st. April 1st, those applications need to be received in order to make the lottery. So heads up, if you're planning for new H-1Bs, if you have some current employees that you like that are recent college grads, you should be applying for H-1Bs immediately if you like them at all. And February 15th is a good time frame to contact me and probably any other attorney to get the ball rolling on this. So here's the general process. Again, this is normally just handled by your attorney, but generally the process is that you're going to make the application, again, April 1st for new ones, otherwise during the year before they start working for you, the application needs to be received. And you're going to make the application depending on where you are in the country or the type of H-1B visa. It's going to be made in either California, Vermont, or Nebraska. None of this stuff is done locally. This is all sent two big processing centers in California, Vermont, and Nebraska. There's going to be a bunch of forms, and there's going to be a job description. You don't have to recruit. So one of the things you don't have to do with the H-1B is you don't have to advertise in the newspaper. You don't have to do any of that. But you do need to get a certification from the Department of Labor that you're paying prevailing wages, and it's pretty easy to get that certification. It's not hard as long as you're paying enough salary. But you do need to get some sort of certification for the H-1Bs so that when you make the application, if they graduated abroad, your job is going to have to require a highly specialized degree like engineering or computer science or something like that. It's going to have to require that. And if they graduated abroad, you're going to have to get an equivalency done by some third-party agency saying that this foreign degree is the equivalent of a U.S. degree. So just know that within the process there are some extra fees that might depend on the exact situation. But if all goes well, you get the application in, they sit on it for way too long, and then eventually it gets approved. Now, one of the things the Trump administration took away, which is nonsensical in my opinion, is the ability to do premium processing. And so for years and years and years, we were able to submit visa applications and then pay an extra, used to be $1,000, and then more recently it was $1,225 to guarantee a 15-day turnaround. It's really nice. Businesses then know, like, oh, is my visa going to be approved or not? But I guess the Trump administration didn't want money from the business community, so they did away with the premium processing opportunity for H-1Bs, and so now you file H-1B applications and you might be sitting around for 6 to 9 months waiting to see what the government does with it. It's fairly frustrating, but there's not a whole lot that can be done. This is all part of the slow walk that is currently being done. Those are H-1Bs. Okay, so we're moving on to, and yes, that is Tony Stark from Iron Man, because I really like the Iron Man movies. And I think Tony Stark is a pretty cool guy. Even though he's a fictional character, but I think he is a good symbol of an international business tycoon type thing, and that's what we're looking at with L1A and L1B visas. So we're done with H-1Bs. Those are for highly skilled workers, a lot of times entry level, but that's different than the L1A and the L1B. So let's just say that you have foreign subsidiaries. You are somehow affiliated with foreign companies, and you want to bring over an executive or a manager, or you want to bring over somebody who's a highly skilled specialist, like somebody who knows like this process or this machine that we manufacture over in Germany, and they're the go-to engineer on it, and you want to bring them over to the United States to train everybody else. Those are specialists. So we've got the L1A and the L1B, and not surprisingly, it's a little easier. It's easier to get the process to get these L1A and L1B visas because these are really highly compensated executives, managers, and specialists that are, all part of the globalization framework that we have. And so, you can imagine all the multinational companies that would scream bloody murder if the United States stopped letting their executives and managers come over on their private jets to work in the United States, and they could eventually get green cards. So if you are in the situation where you have where you're a multinational company and somehow affiliated, and you want to bring over a manager or an executive or a specialist, here's what you kind of need to know. One, you're going to get up to 7 years if the person's an executive or a manager. So 7 years of work authority. It's going to be 3 years to start, and then 3 years on renewal, and then you can get an extra one thrown in there for good measure. 5 years for specialists. So it's a little bit lower, but 5 years for specialists. Again, the nice thing with this, just like with the H-1B, you don't have to advertise for the job. It's not like it's an opening. You can just transfer the person. You don't have, and for these L visas, you don't have to say like, I'm going to pay my executive prevailing wage in the United States or in Chicago or in the county is how they would look at it. So I'm not going to pay prevailing wages. It's not relevant to the analysis for the Department of Homeland Security. So So that's nice. We don't have to jump through that hoop of getting a certified wage for specialists or executives or managers. But what they do need to do is they need to have worked for your company, whether it's a subsidiary or sister company or whatever it is, parent company, whatever it is. They have to have worked abroad for your company for at least 1 year. So it's not for like newly hired people. So if you're General Motors and you want to bring somebody over from a Germany plant who's a manager of such and such division, that manager needs to have been employed by the German subsidiary or the German sister company or whatever. They need to have been employed by them for at least 1 year. And then you can bring them over to the United States, and they can work for up to seven years total. The other nice thing with this is that their spouses can work as well. So they can actually apply for work authority cards. So it's kind of, I always call it kind of like the Cadillac of visas. If you're bringing over an executive manager or a specialist, their spouses, if they're married, their spouses can also work. That's not necessarily true with the H-1B visas. There is some limited exception to that for H-1B visas for those H-1B people who have green cards approved for their spouses. But right now, it's probably going to be taken away under the Trump administration. But for L-1A and L-1B employees, their spouses can work. And that's great. They just have to apply for it, and we can, your attorney can always help you with that. But it also can lead to the green card. So L1As can get green cards relatively quickly if they're an executive or a manager. So they can get, it's pretty seamless to do the green card process. I'm not saying it happens overnight or anything, but if anybody's going to get a green card in this day and age, it's going to be somebody who's a Tony Stark-like person. It's going to be somebody, who's coming over from an international company to be an executive or a manager. So you can definitely go through that process. So there we are, executives and managers. TN visas, they're different. They're only for Canadians, and they're only for Mexicans. They are born from the NAFTA treaty. So the TN visa is something that's specifically carved out in NAFTA. And the question that you might have is, yeah, but I heard that they're going to get rid of NAFTA. Right. If they got rid of NAFTA, no more TN visas. That would make a lot of people cry because we have lots and lots and lots and lots of workers from Canada and Mexico, mainly from Canada, but Mexico too, coming in on TN visas. And so the NAFTA treaty says that if you work in a certain job in Canada, or Mexico, and you have a lot of these jobs require that you prove that you have a college degree or the equivalent. And if you work in one of these certain job categories, then you can apply for a TN visa, and you can work in the United States for 3 years. So you can get a 3-year visa, TN visa, and you can get work for 3 years, and then it's renewable indefinitely. So as long as there is a NAFTA, and assuming that they don't amend it, but as long as NAFTA exists, Canadians and Mexicans can come to the United States and work under the TN status. The categories are different. It's different than H-1Bs. H-1Bs, we talk about highly skilled workers that in jobs that require highly skilled degrees. And that's not how it works under NAFTA. Now, most of the jobs are highly skilled, but there are a lot of really weird jobs out there that are covered under NAFTA. And I don't know why, but I assume that back in the late 80s and early 90s when they were negotiating NAFTA, that they just decided, like somebody said, hey, I've got a brother-in-law, that works as an urban planner. Or I've got I know this one guy who's a forest ranger in Canada who really would like to go and work in Montana in the United States on forest management. And then so forest management ended up being in the category of jobs that you can bring people over to the United States to work in if they're Canadian or Mexicans under the TN visa. So really you just got to kind of fit the job and to the visa. But the nice thing with the TN visa is, to be safe, it's always safe for you to contact legal counsel to apply for the TN visa here in the United States, but TN visas can also be applied for at the U.S. Embassy, or for Canadians, they can even be applied for at any port of entry. So they can actually, like, you could just be a lumberjack, and which you might be, probably not, but maybe you aspire to be a lumberjack some days. But let's just pretend you're a Canadian lumberjack and you want to come to the United States. You've got a job offer and you want to come to the United States and you want to work in lumberjacking. And so you go, you get your offer letter and you go to the port of entry and you say, I'm lumberjack, and they say that's okay. And then you show them the application, the acceptance letter from the employer, and maybe you've already gotten a TN approval because their attorney applied for it. But if not, you could also say, well, here's my application, and you fill out the application right there. And then they look at you and they're like, okay, you're wearing a lot of flannel, and you're really, really strong and unshaven, and so therefore you seem to be a lumberjack, and this seems to be a legitimate welcome to the United States. And so they can give you a TN visa for up to 3 years. It's renewable indefinitely. Now the limitation on the TN visa is that lumberjack can never apply for a green card. So TN visa, you have to have, although TN visas, you could be in the United States indefinitely for like the rest of your life working as a lumberjack. The TN visa, you have to technically have the intent not to, immigrate and become a citizen of the United States. And so that's the limitation on the TN visa, is that you can never get citizenship and you can't apply for a green card. Moving on from lumberjacks, we are going to go to the B visa. Now, a lot of times, especially if you're talking to Europeans, they're going to talk about B visas, and they're going to call it ESTA. Now, ESTA is a deal that we have with a lot of countries that allows, well, first of all, it allows Americans to go and travel in a lot of countries for up to 90 days. It's called ESTA. But B visas, when somebody comes in under ESTA, they could also be coming in for an ESTA is a shorthand for a B visa, and you could also get a B visa to come into the United States for business. And so, from some countries aren't on this whole ESTA deal where we don't trust them well enough. Because they're not from Western Europe or something, so we don't. There's more fear, and so we don't trust that their citizens are as non-dangerous. And so if you're from one of those countries that we don't trust as much, then you have to go through the B visa application process, whether you want to come to the United States for business or fun. And so the B visa could be, for you to bring over workers into the United States if you've got a subsidiary or a partnership with a foreign company, then you could apply for a B visa to bring in these people to come in and do some temporary work for you for up to 6 months. Now, there are a lot of catches to all this, and it takes a little work to figure this all out. But the reality is, there is this opportunity under the B visa category for short-term work. Now, the person can never get a green card, and they can't have any intent to stay in the United States, but if you need some temporary work, and it could even be renewed, so it could be, that the person comes over and works, for a year, or even 2 years at the most, but it does give you an opportunity for some short temporary work to bring people over from a foreign country. That's the B visa. Here is a chart that I put together that might be helpful, talking about just general, important requirements and risks and costs and stuff like that. And you'll see the EB5 category right here. I'm not going to talk about the EB5 category much, but if you know wealthy people that want to invest in the United States, have them give me a call. We could talk about getting them green cards in the United States, because the United States likes people with lots of money to invest in starting up businesses here and creating jobs. So, at least so far today, who knows, next week, maybe not. Okay, so green cards, let's talk about the process and everything in pretty short order. Green cards are a shorthand for a lawful permanent residence. That means that the person can lawfully stay in the United States, and they can work indefinitely, and they can eventually even apply for citizenship, and they can travel, and they can come and they go, and they can serve in the military and all these great things. about the United States. And so that's a lawful permanent resident. That's somebody who has a green card and they can work for you forever if they want and if you want. And so that's really great. It takes a long time to get, long is relative, but for some individuals, it could take 7, 8 years, even if you're sponsoring them as a business. Now, there are three types of green card paths. One, you've got this lottery, random lottery, and I don't really, talk much about that, but because that's, for people all over the world that are applying for a lottery. And then 2, you've got family. So if family is sponsoring other family members to come to the United States, there's that process. So that's the family-based thing. But most applicably for people on this call, there's the employment green card process. And so if you have a worker that's here on a visa like H-1B or L visa, not TN, not B visa, but some, they're here on temporary work authority, and if you like them, the only help that you can really offer to them is to sponsor them for a green card. Now, could they get the green card after you've sponsored them? Could they get the green card and then go across the street to your competitor? Yeah, they could. I mean, they can work anywhere for anybody in the United States. So that's the limitation, but oftentimes it takes a lot of years to get that green card, and so you've kind of locked down that employee in many ways for many years while this process plays out. So the downside is it's not free, but you're looking at cost of $7,000 to $10,000 spread out over several years to sponsor this green card. So it's not crazy expensive, especially if you like the employee and then you don't have to find a new employee. And I mean, your replacement costs are probably going to exceed the cost for the green card. For certain, for almost any position these days. So, the cost for a green card, well worth the investment to get this person locked down for several years and, potentially indefinitely if they like you and you like them. So general steps, just so you understand, the green card is the process that you sometimes hear about and talk about, where you have to recruit and advertise in the newspaper. So that's the green card. So it's not the visas, none of that. It's the green card process that we have to advertise in a couple Sunday newspapers. We have to get a certification from the Department of Labor saying that we are going to pay prevailing wages. And the Department of Labor it's a much more intricate certification process than the one that we go through with like the H-1Bs. And so we're going to apply for this certification. We're going to get the salary locked down because we don't want to disenfranchise and we don't want to harm wages in the United States, right? So we're going to do that whole process. We're going to recruit, and then assuming there are no more qualified there are no more qualified applicants that are U.S. workers, but our person that we wanted to sponsor is the most qualified, then we can move to step 2, and we can get the labor certification process. And then once that's applied, but if there are more qualified U.S. workers, technically you're supposed to go with them. So you do have to go through this process. And then after you get the wage certified, then you move on and you apply for the actual green card with the Department of Homeland Security. So step 1 is we apply with the Department of Labor to get the certified wage. And then step 2, we apply with the Department of Homeland Security for the green card itself. And then after we get the green card, then we make another application to the Department of Homeland Security to transfer the person to lawful permanent resident status. So the approval doesn't mean we're all done. It means that we have a third phase, which is to move on to the lawful permanent resident phase for the individual. And then once that's done, and that could take years and years and years and years and years, once that's done, then they have a green card. And so this whole process from start to finish could take anywhere from a year and a half, which is the most optimistic that you could possibly say, anywhere from a year and a half to 10 years right now. And along the way, hopefully the person's doing a good job working for you. There are several types of categories for green cards. There's also the EB-5, but there's several types of categories. There's category 1. It's for like the Bonos of the world. It's for Paul McCartney. It's for executives. People who come in on L1A visas, executives, managers, otherwise really high, Nobel Prize winners. Those are the types in one. And then in two, we've got people who are, more common people with 5 years of experience and a bachelor's degree or a master's degree plus 1 year of experience, post-grad experience. And then the third is the bachelor's degree by itself. So this right here is just me repeating basically everything I've said for the last hour. But just just to repeat it, if in order to get somebody, in order to employ somebody in the United States, they have to prove to you that they have work authority. If they're a foreign national and they don't have a current green card, you're probably going to have to look at sponsoring them, or at least you need to confirm that they have some sort of other status that allows them to work in the United States. And again, that's all part of the I-9 process. But when you're recruiting people, you definitely have to figure out, like, how long can this person potentially work for me? Are they eventually going to need a green card? If I really like them, what is that path? And so hopefully after today, you've got a little bit better sense of, like, these are the visas that I could pursue, and then some of them allow for a path toward green card and some of them don't. But for your high-tech workers, you're looking at either H-1Bs or L visas, and then you're looking at, if you like them, pretty soon in the process, like 1 year, 2 years at the most, you need to make the decision whether or not you're going to pursue a green card for them, and that's the only way that you're going to get them to work, beyond 5 years for L1B, beyond 6 years for H1B, or beyond 7 years for L1A for your executives and managers. So you definitely need to be thinking about the green card process. You are definitely welcome to give me a call, contact me at any time with regard to questions on this. I really appreciate everybody's attendance. Follow up with me if you need anything, and I wish you all a good month, and we'll talk next month about immigration compliance in the workplace and strategies on that. Thank you.